The first time that I was offered the opportunity to come to Singapore was in 1982, 34 years ago. And my best friend was Singaporean. And I was coming here with Washington Ballet, and we were doing a performance for Singapore Festival of the Arts. And I had to get free from another commitment. And I remember going to the other people and saying, please, 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 please let me go. I don't know if I'll ever get this opportunity again in my life. I had no idea that I would end up spending the majority of my adult life here, a large majority. I taught Singapore Dance Theatre, the very first ballet that had ever performed 28 years ago, and I stayed involved for almost every single year of its history until 10 years ago when they asked me if I would come and take care of the company as the artistic director, which one of the things that I was supposed to tell you is about being a dancer. And that's sort of an alien art form to a lot of people. But you have to see, in my situation, the way I was raised, I had a grandfather that was a symphony musician, and my mother had danced. And anything that was within the arts was considered to be something of value. If you wanted to be a musician, if you wanted to be a writer, if you wanted to be a dancer, my brother was a calligraphist. Anything that was, it required a talent that couldn't be learned but had to be developed. That was the highest thing that you could possibly attain. And so while it wasn't, I wasn't forced, I wasn't one of those little 4-year-olds that was forced to play piano. And well, actually I was, truthfully. I did have to play piano. My grandfather used to give me piano lessons when I was very, very young. But none of it was forced, it was just put in front of me, and if I grabbed for it, they were going to let that happen. I think, though, if I had turned around and at some point, because I did at one point when I was 12 decide that I wanted to do what normal kids did, because I'd always been doing dance classes and piano lessons and da-da-da-da. And at 12 I thought, I want to be what normal kids, and I stopped. And everybody collectively held their breath and went, okay, he'll figure it out, he'll figure it out. I think if at that point I'd turned to my parents and said that I wanted to be a banker, they would have literally torn their hair out and said, what did we do wrong? Because this was everything, the path was clear. And I say that half as a joke, but it's not a joke at all. Nobody encouraged me. Nobody discouraged me. And I didn't realize how wildly that difference was until I've heard other dancers say, oh, my parents didn't want me to dance, da, 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 da. My parents didn't care if I danced or not. The only thing that they cared about was that I become me fully. They wanted to figure out what I wanted to be and then make it possible for me to be in an arena where that would become reality. And after that, it was completely up to me. So I had this sort of ping moment when I was 14 years old, and I said, if I'm not a dancer, I will never be happy. I will never be who I am supposed to be. And that's the truth. And I realized it from that moment on. I had no plan B. I went to a big ballet conservatory, and I didn't think ever, which when I look back at it was really quite bold. I never thought, what if this doesn't work? What if I'm not talented enough? Because dance is very, how do you say it? Dance is very rigorous. It's not just hard, it's very specific. You have to have the right physique, you have to have the right mentality, you have to have the right gifts. It never dawned on me that I might not have those gifts. It never dawned on me for one split second. I wanted it, and I was going to do whatever was necessary. But I was around a lot of other people who also wanted it, and they weren't going to get it. And that was very, and you could tell. It was interesting to go through the process. But as I was saying, I mean, I have huge respect for the way I was encouraged to be who I am. When I joke that my mother used to say, whenever I did anything wrong, she said, Janek, you were raised a gentleman, if not a prince. And I knew I had done something terrible to be offensive. Because so much was expected, but so much was given to me. So therefore, when I turned around and said I wanted to be a dancer, it was, I love the fact that they've got a clock right in front of you. Sort of like ticking down and you'll explode at 18 minutes. So when I turned around and said I wanted to be a dancer, all that was necessary was to find out if I was talented enough, And as I said, my mother had been a dancer. My grandfather was a symphony musician. If I was talented enough, and how could I make that talent a reality? So they got me to a conservatory, a very big ballet conservatory. Luckily, I was accepted, and I went through the whole process of training. And the goal was to become a professional dancer. I didn't think, am I going to make money? What's my life going to be like? All I thought was, this is supposed to be who I am. This is actually who I am. This is what I was meant to be. And I cannot tell you, I think, I have to say I thank whatever it is up there. I have to thank every single day, because this is exactly who I was meant to be. I didn't have to become something else. I didn't have to have distractions that I wanted to go golfing because I hated my work. I didn't have to do anything, because everything was done to get to the place that I was supposed to be. I have these silly notes. Now, everybody who knows me knows that I'm really easy talking on a comfortable level this way, but if I have to read anything, I'm impossibly bad. But I will actually look to see if there's anything I didn't say. The whole thing about being a dancer, when you decide, because dancers are trained from very young. I started at 8 years old. And that by the time you are 16, you know if you're going to make it or not. And after that becomes a struggle. And I remember when I got to be 19 and I thought, I don't have a job yet. I don't have a job. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. And then luckily, it all turned around in 2 days. And I got my first contract in Canada, where I was a dancer for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. From there, I toured throughout places that I had. One of my other desires had been to see the entire world. I'm originally born in Sweden, raised in America, went to school in England, and then, but I wanted to get out and see things. And so we went on tour to Australia. I've been able to go absolutely every single place in the entire world, all because of dancing, which is really quite, and somebody else pays for it, it's great. And also you get to be, it's not being a tourist, you get to be there working with companies, working inside theaters. It's really being a part of something much deeper. But this whole business about becoming a dancer was who I was as a personality. It was who I was at my core. I like being unconventional. Obviously, I didn't dress up for you today, because usually what I wear to rehearse, and you have no idea. And I'm 64. So, this is about as dressed up as I get. Actually, last year I got the Culture Award here in Singapore, and I had to go out and buy a tuxedo. And I was so nervous getting a tuxedo, because it's just not the kind, I could ask me to wear tights, ask me to wear a dance belt, ask me to dress up like a prince, I'm fine. Ask me to wear a tuxedo, I'm horrible, absolutely horrible. I digress. Being a dancer, we're raised to be aristocrats. Our manners are taught to us, our sense of responsibility is taught to us. When you're a male dancer and you are responsible for taking a female dancer, putting her up over your head and running across the floor, and she can only see what's behind her, you learn a sense of responsibility for another person. She learns a sense of trust in you. You learn a sense of silent communication. You learn how to behave towards another person with a sense of respect, a sense of, there's a great deal of male-femaleness about dancing. A great deal of it. It's very hierarchical. It's very much based on manners. And that's why I said the whole thing about dancers being aristocrats. We're taught to behave a certain way. The way we rehearse, the way we take class, because we take class every single day of our lives, the way we take class, the way we rehearse, the way we perform. It's a sense of responsibility towards A, the company, and B, towards each other. I was always taught when I was a dancer in a company, and I was lucky to dance in really, really, really good companies. I was taught if I danced badly, if I performed badly in an evening, I didn't let myself down, I let the organization down. I reflected badly on the company that I danced for, and that was drilled into us. And I didn't have to, it wasn't too much drilling, I believed it. I thought it was actually accurate. And so all of those things that happened while, I was lucky that I had a specific kind of look and talent as a dancer, and so I became a principal dancer actually when I was quite young. And I was the favorite dancer of the man. Some of you might know there's a very famous company called Netherlands Dance Theatre. It was founded by a man named Benjamin Harkavy, and he was my teacher. And so when I was dancing, he was the person who was immediately in front of me in classes and rehearsals, and those sense of responsibilities were given to me through him. And then I ended up becoming his ballet master. So when I became a principal dancer, when you become a dancer, when you come in at low level, you learn from everybody around you, if you're smart. You pick up from everybody around you. And then as it goes along, you learn to be the example for the people who are coming in behind you. And it progresses that way. And so the sense of responsibility through being a dancer, at one point, they said, there was a very famous choreographer, Sir Kenneth Macmillan, and he thought that I would be good learning a particular kind of movement, dance notation called Benish. And I had already become what was called a ballet master, which means I taught and rehearsed ballets. And so Sir Kenneth took me to the corner one day and said, oh, you should learn Benish. And so I went off on this different path in my career. So I was the ballet master of the Washington Ballet, which we went everywhere because everybody thought we were the national company of the United States, which is not the truth. But we went everywhere. We went through the Far East, we went through South America, we went through Europe, we went everywhere. Based on the fact that we had the name Washington. And that was a wonderful, it fulfilled every one of those things that I had. I was the ballet master for the company, so I was responsible for teaching them class every day and putting them on stage in ballets. And through the Washington Ballet, the resident choreographer and the associate artistic director was a Singaporean, a man named Choo-San. Very, very famous here in Singapore. He was my best friend. And when I think about dance and I think about the people that it gave me, when you think about the fact that not only did it give me a life, it gave me people like Choo-San. It gave me the most important people in my life, the ones that I respected, the ones who taught me things, the ones who I will think about until my last day. And that's when you think that that's your livelihood. It's not something that I don't do a job and then I do something else to balance it out. It is everything. So Choo-San was quite a remarkable choreographer, and with Washington Ballet, he was the resident choreographer, and we went all around the world. And then after, Choo-San passed away in the late 80s, and then after that, I got a call to come back to Sweden, and so I went to the Royal Swedish Ballet, where they were very sweet. They said, "Time to come home now," which I thought, well, this isn't home. I'm Swedish, but it became home again. It did become home again. And it was a wonderful place to be and learn a different aspect of myself. And from there I went to Pittsburgh Ballet Theatre as the ballet master. From there I went to Norwegian National Ballet, back to Scandinavia, which always seems to be the call, of the lure and the call. And then I got, all this time I was coming to Singapore every single year and helping Singapore Dance Theatre become more and more what it was meant to be. And 10 years ago, they asked me if I would come here and stay full time, and my first response was no. I knew what was needed for the company, and I didn't think that I could provide it. So they talked to me, and they said, you know where the company is now, you know where it needs to go, and you know how to get it there. So I thought, yeah, that's probably right. They said, if we get somebody else, they might never understand it the way you do. We stand the best chance if you do this. And so they were very smart that they talked me into it. Singapore Dance Theatre was founded 28 years ago by two very important Singaporeans, Madam Goh Soo Kim and Anthony Then. They started it for a number of reasons. Now, people always say, why do we need culture in Singapore? Which, just makes me berserk. Why do we need Pokemon Go? Ben Simpuai, actually, from the Esplanade said, culture may not be something that we need in life, but it's the spice that makes everything else worthwhile. And I think that's true. All of the arts can define us in a way. They're the one thing that can change a life. You can go see a play that can change your mentality about how you look at things. You can hear a symphony. I go to the symphony all the time. I go to the symphony, and the way I say I go to the symphony is the way most people go to church. It centers me. It really does the exact same thing. It centers me. It allows me to think clearly. It makes me feel right. I think, okay, this does for me what church does. The arts are there to give you something that the rest of your life does not provide. It can take you out of your normal existence, your normal daily life, and provide you with something that, unless you experience it fully and sort of surrender to it, and you do have to sort of surrender to it, you have to give it a chance and say, if people say, I'm not going to understand it, what's to understand? Just experience it, you know? Singapore Dance Theatre was founded so that Singapore would have good, high quality dance performances here, and it wouldn't always be outside groups coming in. It wouldn't be groups from England or Australia or America coming in. It would be a Singaporean institution. And with the establishment of the company, and it was only founded 28 years ago with 7 dancers, there wasn't any idea exactly where it was going to go. And I know because I was around at the very beginning. And from that very small beginning, they started thinking, okay, well, this was successful, we could go here. This was successful, we could go here. This didn't work, don't go there again. You know, and so they sort of went around for a while. And so 10 years ago, they thought that maybe if I would help give it a long-range plan. And it's what I'm really, really good at. Those people who know me know that I'm good at sort of saying, okay, we need to get here. We're here right now. To get there, we have to go this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, in as straight a possible line as it can, and not tuk-tuk. And so for the last 10 years, we've been fairly much doing that. We now have 38 dancers. We tour all around the world. We perform at the Esplanade. We do 6 seasons a year. It's a company of substance. And it can offer people in Singapore something that, instead of importing it from outside, we can have it here. The second most important thing, and it is an extremely important thing, is that previously, if you were a person like Choo-San or numerous other people who wanted to pursue arts or dance as a career, you had to leave Singapore and never come home again. There would never be anything for you here. You would never dance professionally. So you could go to the Royal Ballet School, and if you were talented enough, you could get into a company, but you couldn't come home unless you gave up your career. Singapore Dance Theatre was founded with the intention that people could have careers here. Now, in addition to that, we have dancers from the Paris Opera Ballet, we have from the Australians, we have 9 different nationalities in the company. And someone says, but what about the Singaporeans? Well, we have a lot of Singaporeans, but if someone gives their life and their soul, I've been giving 28 years of my life to Singapore Dance Theatre. That's pretty weighty when someone else says, well, but you're not Singaporean. Yes, you're right. And I care more about Singapore than someone who carries a passport, because I care because it matters to me, not because it's an assumption. And I think that it's with anybody who's representing an arts organization, there's a spirit within the arts organization that you are, like I said earlier when I was taught as a dancer, this is what you represent. You are out there to represent Singapore Dance Theatre. So all of our dancers are given that message clearly. You notice we're not called Singapore Ballet. I shouldn't touch that thing. We're not called Singapore Ballet because we don't specifically represent ballet. The 2 founders didn't want the company to be narrowly defined by saying that this was a ballet company. And so therefore, we do contemporary work, we do classical work, we do new works. But the one thing that's at the heart of the company is that we do works that are made for us primarily. Things that are meant to explore the dancer's talents and exhibit the company at a very, very high level, rather than always bring imported things. Sometimes we bring in works, I always say that those are the 3 pillars of what holds Singapore Dance Theatre up. There's the 19th century classical works that everybody identifies as ballet, Swan Lake, The Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, and I do love them dearly. But honestly, if I had to watch Swan Lake and Sleeping Beauty and Nutcracker for the rest of my life, I think my brain would drain out my ears. The only reason that those things are wonderful is they are offset by new works and contemporary works and classical works. But if I could only see things, if I could only watch Netherlands Dance Theatre for the rest of my life, I think I would feel the exact same way. Balance is everything that's important. This balances this, which gives weight to that, which is important to see this. And again, it's important to see everything. People will say, well, I don't think I'm going to like it. Well, do you really think so little of yourself that you're not smart enough to appreciate something? You know, just experience it, see what happens. One of the other questions that I was asked, because they gave me very, very specific things that I was supposed to speak about, developing the next generation. That's very difficult. I thought about this in my own self. If I could speak to my younger self, because that's something that everybody says, I would encourage myself to have more authority about my confidence about myself. And that's what I think the generation that I'm trying to develop within Singapore Dance Theatre, they need to have a sense of confidence and a sense of authority about what they're doing so that we do the best. And then when the company was first founded, there really wasn't enough Singaporean talent. So then we brought in talent from outside. That inspired other dancers. So now we have more Singaporean dancers in the company than we've ever had. In large places like the Royal Ballet School and the Australian Ballet School, all the big companies, the School of American Ballet, which is the feeder school for New York City Ballet, almost all of those companies are populated by that country's nationals because the school is so strong. That Singaporean that doesn't exist here. There is no training institution that develops professional dancers. In time, we hope. In time. But there's more emphasis on producing performances right now. But if the next generation can do anything, can take Singapore and change the attitude from outside. I always would say I want Singapore Dance Theatre to be one of the cultural ambassadors so that everybody doesn't think that Singapore is an airport or F1 or a shopping stopover or a place that has some wonderful banking principles. It's much more than that. And certain organizations, Wild Rice, Pandemonium, Singapore Symphony Orchestra, have done that brilliantly by going overseas, and I want Singapore Dance Theatre to be able to do the same. But for that, we need the next generation, as we were talking about. That group of Singaporean talents that's going to develop from having the ability. Had the founders not started Singapore Dance Theatre, had Singapore Symphony Orchestra not started, had Pandemonium and all of the other artists that have started, had it not started at the ground, there would be nothing for the next generation to build on. And so for Singapore Dance Theatre, what we're trying to do is bring the highest quality international scope dance company here we can. So it's not always about outside people come. It's not always about seeing it done well because other people have done it well. We would like to be the example of something that other people look at and go, you know, that company, very good. Someone said to me recently, they said, you know, I came to see the company, I didn't expect it to be so good, and I was furious. They meant it as a compliment. I said, why did you not expect it to be good? But, well, you know, it's Singapore. And you go, what does that mean? What does that mean? And so I thought it had said more about them than us. The company now, with Singapore Dance Theatre, we are at a very high level, and I'm hoping we're going to get it at a higher level. I'm inexhaustible when it comes to ambition and desire for the organization. So I hope I've given you some idea of Singapore Dance Theatre and why I ended up here. Thank you.